here today with an amazing musician and, so many hats. You wear so many hats, Rhiannon. Her name is Rhiannon Giddens. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you agreed to do this. I know you've been very busy and you just flew in and you're doing some recording here. And I just thought, she's going to be on the property. Maybe we can have her on the show. So the podcast that we're starting is I really wanted to talk about culture, creativity, and how it creates community. Because I think that's very interesting. And it seems like after researching you, I've been knowing about you, but when I knew that you were going to come on the podcast, I started doing a little bit more research. And a lot of the stuff you do is about community and creativity and culture. So Rhiannon, as a young child, you grew up in a home that seemed like you had a lot of music in your home. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I grew up in, the Piedmont area of North Carolina. And my first, until I was about 7 or 8, I was with my grandparents out in the country with my sister and my mom kind of coming back and forth. She was finishing her degree and, all of these sorts of things. And then we moved into town, Greensboro, the metropolitan area of Greensboro. And so I feel like I'm a kind of half and half kid, because I started in the country and then I moved to a very small city and never really felt like I fit in 100% because I think my first place is the country because that's all of my formative memories as a child are even when we moved into the city I was always out in the country, so it's kind of like there's not a lot to do out there.
Yeah.
So me and my sister sang together a lot. She's 7 years older than me. And then my dad was a singer. He had a music degree that he ended up in computers, but he sang all the time. So between him and my sister, and then my mom was always playing music, like playing on CDs of really different stuff, like Andre Segovia on the guitar, or gospel mass choir on Sunday mornings or whatever. She kind of really whetted my appetite for lots of different kinds of music. But then I was just singing all the time. My mom tells the story of being in the car with me and my dad. And she just eventually was just like, both of you, can you just stop? Because we were both humming, but two different things.
Not together.
Not together at all. Because, we didn't even notice,
Sure.
But I sang with my dad a lot. And I kind of consider him my first teacher because, he didn't, obviously he had a degree in music and he was, could have sung opera if he wanted. He had a beautiful voice, and he played guitar. He put himself through school playing guitar. And he didn't formally, he kind of taught me in the best way by just singing with me. So we would just be in the car going from place to place and we would just be singing, just making up stuff. I learned what a cadence was by just singing with my dad, So it was just part of life. And then my parents they weren't really into, like my dad didn't want me to have voice lessons till I was 16. And then
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
And I read that. What was his?
Just because the voice, is still developing. And, you hear kids that kind of start too early and it kind of forces a vibrato before they're ready for a vibrato. So I was a little straight tone kid. I sang in choir. That was the best thing for me, was the kids choir. And I sang in the Greensboro Youth Chorus. And then when we wanted to go, Star Search does their regional auditions, me and my sister, we want to go sing Whitney Houston. My mom would be like, nope, you're going to do a kata from karate. Like we weren't really Bruce Lee, we were like beginner karate people. So we'd like wait in line for that whole time and then get up there and do our little kata and not get picked and then go home. She was just like, no, I don't, I haven't never asked her why, but I'm really grateful because it meant that I never really did music for the applause when I was a kid, it was just like something that we did. It was just a family thing, and I'm grateful not to have that connotation with it. Even in the choir, you're in a choir. So it's like it's a different kind of thing. The whole group is getting the applause, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. I wonder, that's your parents probably saw that And that happens around here a lot, where a lot of kids maybe can do 3 little notes on the accordion and they up on stage and it's like, ah!
Yeah.
And it really does kind of, I think, affect kids deeply. And I think that now, like you said, like your love for the music is just about your love for the music, not about the attention that it gives you.
Yeah. I mean, I really feel very strongly about it. So I've been kind of, in a similar way with my own kids, like, just want them to enjoy music, and just want them to find their instrument, find their way in it, and encourage them to make and to give them opportunities. But like, they don't be a professional musician, that's totally fine. If they don't, you know what I mean?
Right,
I just want them to have it in them, and then they can do what they want with it.
Mm-hmm. You were saying something, and I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were talking about your father, and one of the things you were saying was like you didn't want you to do the lessons, and it seemed like you were about to say something else, but I don't know if you remember what you were going to say.
Yeah, I think that he was just really protective, because he'd seen, I think he, kind of seen some things, and because he knew what training really was, because he'd had it himself, but not until he was older, and in college. So when it was time, when I was 16 and I started looking like, I was like, oh, maybe this is something, maybe I should get, know a little bit more about the singing thing. Then, he was cool, and he went with me, and we found a good teacher, and then, I was off to the races. But before then, I don't really see anything more necessary than what I got in youth choir, which was sit up straight, breathe in deep, don't let your shoulders rise when you breathe, and learning how to, put a sound out. Like, that's all you need as a kid.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Right. That's awesome. So, so you started taking lessons and you were in choir. So like, what was your high school, like your school experience did you have any?
I was a little weird. I was a little weird kid. I was a little nerdy little thing. And
you were into science or something?
I was into science. Yeah. So I went to a math science technology magnet school for my first 2 years. And then I went to a math science boarding school for my last 2 years.
Wow, you really...
Yeah. And in Durham, North Carolina, it's like it's actually a public boarding school. So if you get in, it's free, which is amazing. And I got in and was there for my last 2 years of college, which is what convinced me that I didn't want to do math or science. So I'm grateful for that. And so it was interesting because like when I was at science and math, that's really when I realized, okay, I'm an artist. And, I was in the art studio all the time.
Sometimes we have to immerse ourselves in something else just to figure out, like, nope, that's
it. And I was lucky because this school had a really great humanities department and a great art department. I didn't really do the choir there, but I then went to Rising. What changed everything was because I was a Rising senior and I got into Governor School, which is another great public North Carolina, program. It's a 6-week program. And if you get into that, you're doing the thing that you auditioned for. So I auditioned for choir and I got in, and that's where I met theater kids. And that's where I met people who wanted to do music for a living. And I was like, oh, I think maybe I want to do this.
These are maybe my people.
Yeah. So then when I got back to school that fall, I started auditioning, and I, picked a couple of schools to try to audition to. And I was like, opera, they sing all the time. That sounds cool. Let me go learn opera.
So had you ever done opera before?
I had never seen one. I bought a couple of CDs and I was like, this sounds pretty. Did not know what I was doing. And I, auditioned for a couple of schools and I got in, and then I picked the opera school, Oberlin.
In Oberlin, right. So what was that like?
Crazy.
Yeah.
It kind of set the pattern for my life. Like, what do you have to do? Like, I didn't know how to read music. I didn't know the Western art music canon other than these like 3 CDs, like compilations that I had bought. And I went, and it was like crash course in this culture that I had no idea about. All these kids who had been learning this stuff since they were little. And I was just overwhelmed. And I remember going into my teacher. She'd give me all this music to learn, and I didn't know how to use the library, and I didn't know how to learn the music. And I just went in, I just burst into tears, and I was just like, I can't learn any of this music. And she was so awesome. She could have been like so terrible, but she like recorded the songs on a tape for me so I could learn by ear until I kind of learned how to use the library and like check out things and stuff. And that's what got me over the, I'm going home
Right.
energy,
She saw your potential probably. And so let me just bridge the gap for her. She's going to learn.
Exactly.
It's like you can learn how to read music.
Absolutely.
You might not always be able to learn by ear. So she
was amazing. And, so beginning there, at the end of 5 years there, I had been in 5 operas. I had done a whole bunch of stuff. I was tutoring people in oral skills. Like I went, I had worked in the publicity office. I set kind of a pattern for my life there, which was like basically throw yourself in the deep end and work really hard.
Right.
And find the people who will help you. That's the other part, you know. She was helping me. There's other people like, that I was learning from. And after having done that, after having done a 2.5 hour opera in French, where I was the main character, all of a sudden there's stuff doesn't seem that hard. You know what I mean? Like
you're doing it all the time, so it feels more natural.
Right. It's kind of like I did this and I didn't, if I could do this, I can do anything, And maybe it was, I was a pretty good singer. I wasn't like, I probably could have gone into opera, but I realized that I was feeling, I was a pretty good singer, but like I didn't want to commit my life to being an opera singer, which if I was going to be good enough to actually make it, I wasn't like a sport. Like I had to learn, you know what I mean? I had to learn it the hard way. So I was like, I don't know what I want to do. But the learning process, I've applied to everything since, like, learning opera from 0 to 100 and whatever.
It's been so empowering.
Oh my gosh.
So you can, like you say, you can apply that to whatever it is you don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I did that, so if I could do that, I could do.
Yeah, I can pick up the banjo. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not to say that the banjo's easy. It's just to say that, when you've done something like that, it doesn't really matter what it is. When you've done something that was really hard and you've learned it and you have to learn how to, it's like what I say about my kids. I'm like, whether you do something with this instrument or whatever or not, you're learning how to learn. And that's like everything, because then you can apply that to anything. It's learning, okay, I got to do a little bit every day. I got to, think about what I'm playing. I gotta critique myself. I have to like, how do I change this? And then you want to do it again next time. And then I have to learn how, okay, that sounded better last week than you know what I mean? Have patience. All of those things you can apply to other things.
So, Eric's queuing up some banjo there for us. It looks like. So.
Is this okay? Like the answers are, because like they can be short, long, medium, whatever. Is okay.
I want to know. So I like the podcast happens to be here. These mics happen to be here, but I want to ask you all these questions from my own personal. It's like, I get to visit with her. Because I always see you and it's really quick.
Yeah.
It's always a quick.
We're like past ships in the night. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And I knew you were always cool and interesting, but then I started, researching whenever the thought that you might be able to do this podcast, and I can't believe all the things you've done.
I'm kind of a nut.
Oh my gosh, girl. It's like, so you really applied those skills, and that you knew how to learn and how to approach so many different things. So I would like to talk about when you decided to come back home to North Carolina. And how did you go from opera to Appalachian string music as your love? It seems like I see the connection, easily, and especially after hearing you talk about it. But I'm sure the average person's like, wow, opera and banjo.
I know.
It's like, what happened, to make you want to explore your home roots in that way?
Well, I burned out. And that was another lesson. I burned out hard. I made it to, I did an extra year and made it, got my degree, and was just like a rag, a limp, because I put 40 hours into every day. You know what I mean? And I wrote checks that I eventually had to cash. You know what I mean? So I went home. I got into grad school, decided I didn't get any money. It was kind of like I was at this crossroads of I could kind of go down this road and keep trying to, my technique was kind of in disarray, and I didn't, and also the main thing was the opera world wasn't the world for me. I was like, I like to be barefoot. I like to not have to put on makeup. I didn't like all the trappings. I loved the art form.
Right.
Loved opera. I still love opera. I love the size of it, and I love the way that you can really dig into like really deep human emotions with the voice. The voice knows no microphones. I mean, it's amazing. I didn't like all the crap around it. I didn't like the posturing. I didn't like the auditions. I didn't like, do you look like this? Do you look like that? Blah, blah, blah. I said, I'm going home. I went to North Carolina and I started contra dancing. And that was my entry. I had found it in Oberlin. I thought it was English country dance because I'm a Jane Austen fan. And I went and I was like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is okay. It's called contra. Okay, this is cool. And then I had kind of done it a bit. And then when I went back home, I was in the hotbed of contra dance in North Carolina. You could go 3 times a week if you traveled. And so I like fell in love with dancing. And I'd never been a dancer. I'd always felt really awkward. I was like, an overweight kid and just like not very in my body. And I went to this community dance where there's no alcohol. I didn't drink. I was like, I was so boring. Oh my God. I'd go to a party in college and I'd be the first one asleep in the corner. So I never went except for a couple of times. So I was just a real like bookish kind of, focus on the thing. So I went and learned how to have fun dancing, like intergenerational. I learned from like the older folks who'd been doing it. And then there was live music. And I was like, what is this? Because I'd heard bluegrass growing up. My uncle was a bluegrass musician. My grandfather was a bluegrass musician. I didn't know him, but I knew that. But I'd always gone to my uncle's, concerts and stuff. And, it was fine. Bluegrass is fine. But the banjo, I never thought about it. I heard it. I watched Beverly Hillbillies, whatever, like that was the sound. And then it was these old time string bands that Carol Thompson, who was the booker for the vintage Tuesday Night Dance, she was an old time, well, she's still alive. She was an old time nut. And she booked all these Round Peak bands from, kind of nearby. And I was like, that is so funky. What is that? And I started dancing, and then I started calling dances. I just really got into it. And then I was like, oh, I want to play. So that's when I started picking up. I bought my first band. I was working a corporate job this whole time as a administrative assistant and then as a marketing person. And I got another job working at the Macaroni Grill to earn extra money in order. So I was the hostess. I was a singing hostess. So I would go like sing opera for people. I was like, I'm using my degree. Oh my God, for this $5 tip. And as soon as I earned enough money to buy my fiddle and my banjo, I quit.
So you did that little extra job.
Yeah. So I would I'd work all day and then I would go, I'd go work at night. And then as soon as I got enough money, I was like, and I'm done, because I was working enough. But I bought like a cheap Chinese fiddle and a good time banjo and just started kind of banging away at it. And then I would go to like these jams, and then somebody was like, well, like the banjo's a African, and I was like, what? Like I had no idea, and then I started going to these teaching weeks and these dance weekends, and I started seeing like these records like with like Black people playing banjo. I was like, what is this? So I bought all the compilations I could get. And then I've learned about C.C. Conway's book, African Banjo Echoes in Appalachia. And then I met Joe Thompson. And it was like the, oh, it was just like the heavenly chorus like rises up in the back. And I'm like, this is it,
So I was lucky enough to be around Joe a few times, just, from playing music festivals or these music camps like you're talking about. And he was such a wonderful, kind man. And so you met him, And maybe folks who are listening, they may not know who Joe Thompson is. You want to tell them a little bit about Joe?
Yeah, Joe is an African-American fiddler from Piedmont area of North Carolina. He was 86 when me and the other guys who become the Carolina Taco Drops met him. And the funny thing is he was from Mebane, which I've been going for family reunions every year since I was a child. All of my mom's side of the family was from Mebane. And I never knew about him because he lived on the other side of Mebane. He called me Miss Morrow to the end of his days. That's the family, my family, Morrows. So when he, because you meet another Southern person, they're like, so who's your people? And I'm like, well, my people are from here, Joe, like the Morrows. And he called me Miss Morrow forever. That was his connection. Yeah. And I was like, here is an African-American musician playing this music that I love in tradition. It had been passed down from father to son or whatever, family member back to the time of slavery. Like an amazing opportunity, because as a Black person of color, I'm mixed, whatever you want to call me, melanated, whatever, in this music is really hard to find living proponents of in the old tradition, right? Mm-hmm. And to have that in my backyard, like we're related, our family tree, you know what I mean? Because Mebane is tiny. It was just like, wow. It really felt like the chance of a lifetime.
Very, very divine meeting. It seems like in your time of your life. And I can't even imagine Joe's excitement of meeting you and Justin, and I forgot the other, Dom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really interesting because, Joe, as you know, like he was very welcoming to anybody who walked into his door, Black, white, yellow, red, whatever. Like he took his position as a community musician and as an elder very seriously. And, you could just rock up, if you called him ahead of time and you'd rock up with as long as you had a banjo player. He wouldn't play without a banjo player, which is interesting, right? Yeah, I had to have a banjo player. That's why I started playing banjo with him, because I was hoping to learn fiddle too, but I was like, well, I'm the only one who plays banjo, so we women do what needs to be done, right? So I was like, I'll play banjo. But then, of course, I'm really grateful for that opportunity. But the thing about Joe is that he was absolutely very, very generous, but he was also very aware that he was the last of his family to play this music. He was very aware. He grew up playing with his brother. And then when his brother moved away and his brother died, he started playing with his cousin Odell. And then Odell was killed. And so it was just Joe. And then we came along, 3 young Black kids. Like I was 5 years older than the other 2. We were all in our 20s.
You were in your 20s. I was about to ask what age were you all?
I wasn't married yet, had no kids. We're in that perfect, we're old enough to be responsible, but not so old that we have a lot of responsibilities, right?
Perfect. It's a perfect, yeah.
It really was the perfect window. And I was just that little bit of older to be able to, once our band took off, to like use all those skills that I learned at Oberlin to really, get us to the next level in terms of the logistics and stuff. So everything was kind of perfect. But we would go down to Joe's house. And so we started going down there, and then sometimes we'd bring another like Black musician, who wanted to go down. We did that a few times. And so one time I remember, because I was always kind of thinking like, what does he think about all this, because he would tell us stories, but like there, some things he wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, he'd say, oh, the Thompson family band, that was he and his brother at that point, would play for the white dances and the Black dances. And you'd be like, well, what's the difference, Joe? And he wouldn't say.
Talk about it.
He wouldn't say, So it's that kind of stuff, And then he would say stuff to the boys that he wouldn't say when I was around, I'm finding some of that out now. But anyway, but like, I remember one day we were like, Joe, next time we come, we're going to bring so-and-so. And he said, is he white or Black? Like he was clocking that we were starting to, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just like, and that's okay. Like it's this, what I like try to tell people is that life in the South is existing on several different planes at once. And he could be absolutely generous and want to teach anybody who walked through his door, and also be aware that in his community, in his African-American community, that this was dying out. So it's okay, And so we really tried to hold space for all of that. And we were always very, very clear, his white community in Mebane, like, played with him, kept him playing, like, so that by the time we came along, he was still playing after his stroke, you know, because of those folks.
Right.
And we were always really clear about that. Like, we didn't discover Joe. We didn't just, you know,
Right.
this was a community thing, because Southern culture is multicultural, is multiracial, and it just is. And I'm not rewriting any history. I'm just finding the history that already
Was there.
is there.
Yeah. Yeah. The Chocolate Drops, y'all still perform.
Well, we, you know, it was a lightning in a bottle, you know, and we had about 6 or 7 years, the original trio. We formed in 2005. We really started playing 2006. And it was always time, you know, it was never going to last forever, because there were 3 very different people. And, you know, Justin knew he wasn't going to be on the road because you know, he's a botanist and you know, he does all this nature stuff, but he knew what we were doing was really important. So we had him for the time that we had him, and then he wanted to get off the road. And then Dom and I, you know, found some other musicians, and it went through several iterations. And then I got an opportunity to do a solo record at the age of 36. With T-Bone Burnett. And that was kind of the end of it, because I'd been willing to keep going with the band. But then when I got that opportunity, I'm like, that doesn't come every day. And I have things I want to say as a woman.
Right.
And what I was finding is that I was feeling a bit stifled within the band, because I'm a band player. You know, I don't want it to be taken over by any one person, and so I'm
never, like, around here it would be like Rhiannon Giddens and the chocolate, you know, Carolina Chocolate Drops.
Yeah,
you know,
and there was that urge from the very beginning, because I was the girl, I was pretty, whatever, I was a singer, you know, and it's just a pattern that happens. And so I fought it really hard, and you know, it's tiring, but I was like, I believe in this band, you know. So then I felt like I was starting to write songs, I was starting to learn about, you know, the history of slavery in the United States, and writing things from, you know, slave narrative perspectives, particularly women. And I didn't feel like that was the place, you know, so I just had been kind of writing these songs. And so when the time came to do a solo record, I took it, you know, and I foregrounded women's voices in my first solo record. And then that was kind of it. You know, and so I kind of went down that road, and we've had one reunion, and that's probably all we'll have, and that's okay.
That's okay. Know? I mean, you did something that was very important, I think. Yeah. And it still serves everybody beautifully. And one thing I'd like to talk to you about, I think I wrote some notes about the T-Bone Burnett project. So how did you get involved? How did T-Bone find you?
Well, it's really interesting. There was you know, sometimes there is that thing, you know, you watch movies about the show business, and it's like, it seems so unreal and unrealistic, because it's like one thing changes. Sometimes something can really change the direction of your life, though. And for me, it was this concert called Another Day, Another Time, which was kind of celebrating the music of Inside Llewyn Davis, which was this movie that T-Bone had done the soundtrack for, kind of about the Greenwich Village folk revival scene. And so they did this big star-studded concert at, I can't remember where it was in New York, but this, you know, storied theater in New York. And T-Bone, he had reached out to us, because, you know, he's got a lot of ties to North Carolina. So we'd done something for his Hunger Games soundtrack. And so, he'd reached out to us a little bit when he needed our whatever we do. And he said, I want you to do this concert. And I said, well, the band is in flux, because, you know, Dom was leaving, and I had kind of hired new guys, and I didn't want to really foreground either one yet. And so he was like, well, you can do it by yourself. I said, okay. This is my first time I'd done anything by myself.
Wow.
Because I'd been in a band, you know?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to represent Odetta. And also I brought in some Scott Scalick, because I also wanted to represent, like, rural, like, folk music from, you know, like, that hadn't been sort of commercialized at all. You know what I mean? So I brought in the Scott Scalick stuff that I had been, you know, learning about the history of that, which is a whole nother, you know, in North Carolina. And offered those up to him, and he said, okay, great. And so I didn't know anything about what was going to happen. I didn't know who was going to be there. It was one of those things where I was like, I'm focusing on making Odetta proud wherever she is in the ether, right? Because I'd met her and, we'd played for her and we'd had that connection. So I did Waterboy. And I just like all these things kind of just fell into place. Like I was in Ireland the day before I was leaving going, I don't have anything to wear for this thing and it's going to be filmed. And I was like, the last dress I tried on was this like sleeveless black sheath or red sheath, which I never, you know what I mean? I was just like, well, okay, I'll buy this. I have to have something. And then I show up at the theater and it's like, it's Joan Baez and like, Carrie Mulligan, who'd been in the movie and all these like, and they're all kind of in country chic or something. I don't know what it was. It was like, like really nice jeans and like, jackets and stuff. And I'm like in this red dress going, what am I doing? But I was just like, should I wear it? I don't know. It's all I have. Anyway. And I'm like walking around, like thinking about Waterboy because I'd never performed it. I was just like trying to, and I just got out there and I just did the thing, and did the mouth music. And both of those things are just completely wild, in the context of the concert. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know who was there, like I said. And it's so funny because my bassist, Jason, and one of my good friends, Larlin, was in the audience that night. And he was just telling me this yesterday. He was like, we were sitting there and we were like clutching each other going, oh my God, she's killing it. It was like so amazing to get that perspective. People stood up. And then the next day, the papers came out and it was like me in a red dress next to, oh God, she's like folk royalty, she does everything with her husband. No, you can cut this out. In Nashville, they have anyway.
We'll figure it out.
With all of these amazing people, and I'm like mentioned, multiple times. I didn't know like everybody who's anybody in that world was in that audience. I had no idea. I still meet people.
Probably gracious that you didn't.
Oh, it was amazing because I was just focusing on the thing.
Like I want to do my
yeah, which is what I tell people all the time. Like it's like in comedy, you can't focus on the punchline. You have to focus on the delivery. As soon as you start thinking about the punchline, the joke is done. You know?
Oh yeah.
And that was my biggest lesson. I was just like, oh wow, had pure intention, and I was just in the right place at the right time with the right rep. And yeah, I still run into people like, I remember seeing you at that concert. You know what I mean? It really gave my career a boost. And then shortly after that, T-Bone was like, I think we should do a solo record. I was like, okay. And then he was like, oh, I'm doing this other thing with, the new basement, with this basement tape music. And he was like, I think you should do that. And I was like, okay. And, it changed my life. It changed my life. But I was like, I always tell younger people when I'm, if I'm doing any kind of mentoring or whatever, I go, the lesson is I did the thing and I stayed focused on the thing. And then avenues were opened up, and I'm like, what if, my taxi had gotten in an accident on the way to that show? What if I had gotten sick? What if? I was also really lucky, and that's really, really important. It's like, you cannot buy your own press. You cannot eat it. It's like, you have to be like, I was lucky and I worked hard and it worked out. And so I'm going to do what I can with these opportunities when they happen, but you can't absorb that into your essence. Like, it makes you a better person. You just can't. I won't do it. I refuse,
because it's a really good skill to have, because that to find that space where you just focus on the art and being your best at that.
And the story you're trying to tell and the people you're trying to represent.
Right? Yeah.
Right. I was there to represent that Black strain of folk music that often doesn't get talked about, but inspired so many people. I was just like, I'm just there to represent, and then all of these things came out of it. And I walked away from T-Bone's world. Like, I was in that world for that year and it was amazing. And I was like, okay, like, I learned a lot. And now.
Yeah. And so what year was that you did all that with T-Bone?
Yeah, because I recorded both of them in the same year. But I think the basement, I can't remember which came out first, but I recorded them both in the same year. My son was a babe in arms. And it's for the Basement Tapes was actually my first trip away from him, which was really hard. Yeah, that was a hard 2 weeks because that was really hard. But that year was very much like I was like, what is going on, And then the project with the new Basement Tapes project was these 50-year-old Bob Dylan lyrics that were discovered in a box in an attic somewhere that Dylan gave T-Bone permission to do whatever he wanted. So he put this team of people together. It was like Marcus Mumford and Taylor Goldsmith and Elvis Costello and I can't remember Jim James. And then he brought me in, this banjo player. I was like, what am I doing here? Oh my God, I was like the only brown face I saw for 2 weeks. It was so weird.
And were you the only woman as well?
Only woman, yeah. And like sitting there with my minstrel banjo, right? And there's like a mellotrons and like 2 drum sets and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I had such imposter syndrome. And then we just like finished. I have a Bob Dylan co-writing credits.
That's amazing.
Because we finished these songs and made songs. We could do whatever we wanted. It's pretty intense. And then we did the late night circuit, and I'm like on Ellen with Marcus Mumford. I'm like, this is so weird. I rode the ride.
Yeah.
And then I got off.
Yeah.
It was great.
So whenever you got off that ride, what did you decide to focus on?
I ended up down the way at the studio with Dirk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is that transition?
That was the transition. That was my next record. That was what I chose to do, is that I'd had these songs and that I hadn't, I was like, I don't know if this T-Bone record is where I want to put these songs. They were very, very close to me. And I not to say that he wouldn't have done a great job with them, but I'm still learning how I record, how I make music, as opposed to Chocolate Drops. We'd get in and we would just, we'd record the stuff we'd been playing or whatever. Right. But I'm like, what do I want to do with these? And so, ironically, that was another part of that Another Day, Another Time concert, because Dirk was playing with Joan Baez. And so we like jammed at the end at the party. And we're like, hey, this is fun, And so I remember I was talking to different producers about this next record and what I had the songs and what I wanted to do. And none of it was feeling right. And I just said, Dirk, I just think we need to make this record. And we brought the band in, and it's a very special record to me because it's really Dirk's obviously a first-rate producer. He could be producing and engineering for anybody in the world, but he's chosen to make music in a certain way, and it's really about the story and heart and all that stuff that I really love. So it felt like I made the record that I wanted to make with the people that I wanted to make it with, and didn't have to worry about the outside world, and I'm still super proud of that record, and it was about 5 or 7 years too early. It's Freedom Highway, and it was songs based on slave narratives, civil rights music, we did a staple song. I mean, and we had horns. It was just like Americana before Americana became like a thing.
So that's why you think it was 5 to 7 too early?
I think so.
You think if you'd have done it a little bit later, it would have gotten more of...
I think it's one of those that if it had come out like in the year after George Floyd, it would have like gone nuts.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just people weren't ready for it.
Right.
I was in Nashville like too early. Like the movement.
Oh, I remember. You remember that? We were watching Nashville, and we said, "Hey, that's Rhiannon."
The stuff I did on that show, like I'm a banjo playing, like whatever. What was she? Social worker,
right? Who
like on her free time went in and like taught little black children about the banjo. I'm like, we filmed that and it aired, and like nobody gave a crap. Like
we did.
But you know what I mean? Like people who were watching it like enjoyed it, but like nobody realized on it.
The depth of that.
Oh my God. I was just like, what? I'm like, I got so frustrated with that time in Nashville because I was working so hard. I did that song with Eric Church, did Nashville. I was like, being my authentic self, but also like stepping into this world and bringing, this history. And it was just like, crickets, you know?
That's crazy.
And I just, and then I also didn't have community because like Reese Palmer had kind of, had already started, had left, I think by the time I came, like she'd had her frustrations and so we didn't, when you feel like you're on your own and there's an industry that is just like, you know what I mean? Like, so I had to go, but like, I'm proud of the work that I did in Nashville. I'm proud of the work that Dirk and I did on Freedom Highway. And it felt like all of that kind of set up a later chapter. I took a little detour in between, but all of that, was really important, for me to do.
It's like your voice on your own.
Yeah.
It was like the first step towards that. It seems like you had been building up for that. And it seems like it's more of what you're doing now.
Definitely.
Which I really want to talk to you about. But I also wanted to ask you about just a couple of things. As a creative, like you do so many different projects, and whenever you have an idea how do you know where to put that energy? Like which creative endeavor how do you figure that out?
That's a really good question. I've thought about it a lot. And for me, it's like, I get it. There's an energy that I get, I go, ooh. So usually what I do is I get an opportunity, like say the ballet. So I've written music for a ballet and played a ballet it was originally called Lucy Negro Redux, based on these poems written by a Nashville poet, Caroline Randall Williams, when she read an article by an academic saying maybe the Dark Lady from Shakespeare's Dark Lady Sonnets was this black madam who lived in London at the same time that Shakespeare did. They could almost put them in the same place at the same time. And so she's a poet. She loves Shakespeare. She teaches English. And she just kind of took it and ran with it and goes, what if Shakespeare had a black girlfriend? What does that mean for me? It's a black girl, like who loves Shakespeare, and she wrote all these beautiful poems, pulling in Southern imagery, Shakespearean stuff. And so the Nashville Ballet, Paul Vasterling wanted to make a ballet out of it, and they both wanted me to do the music. Wow. So when I was in Nashville, we met up and I was like, what I do is if the story is something I want to help put out there, or if it's something I feel like I'm uniquely qualified for, or I think I have a way in, I go, yes. And then I freak out. And then I wait for the universe to present who's going to help me do it. And what happened with the ballet is that I met an Italian musician named Francesco Turrisi, who's also living in Ireland. And he does Renaissance music and jazz, and he plays, all the instruments. And I was like, oh, wow. And I was like, it was like, I don't even remember how many times we'd been on the phone, because we'd met and we were just kind of getting to know each other. It was like the third conversation. I was like, you want to do a ballet with me? I literally work like this. I just knew I got the right vibe off of him. And he was just like, oh, let me see if the dates work, and then inviting him into the project. That was kismet, So every project where it's something where I'm like, I don't know how to do this, but I know I can, or I know that I can give something to it that is special. And I know they wanted me to do it, it usually my collaborator appears. And then I'm always like, I can do the thing that I do, and I double down on that. So the things that I can't do, I find the person who can complete it. I don't need to learn everything. I don't need to know how to do everything. I just need to do what I do, and then find the person who can do the rest, And that's exactly what happened at the ballet. So, anytime that comes, the same thing happened with the opera. So Spoleto said it's a festival in Charleston, South Carolina, and they invited me to be a composer for this opera idea on the life of Omar ibn Said, who was a Quranic scholar at the age of 36, who was sold into slavery. He was born and raised in Senegal, sold into slavery in the late 1700s, and ended up in North Carolina and was enslaved for over 50 years. He died a slave, and he wrote his autobiography in Arabic. And it's the only document number one, written while somebody was enslaved that we have, because all the other slave narratives are written after they're free. But he was still enslaved, and it's the only one in Arabic that we have. It's a massive document. And he was from North Carolina. It's my home state.
That's amazing.
Nobody ever told me about him. So I got really mad. And then they were like, we want to commission you to write an opera about Omar. And I was like, yes. And then I had an existential crisis. I was like, what have I done? I don't know what I'm doing. And so I thought, I was just like, I know that I can bring something. A lot of it is instinct that's been honed from years of, living. And I was like, I know I could bring something to this that's really important, but I also know that I can't do it by myself. And so I had seen the movie Get Out by Jordan Peele, and it had this amazing soundtrack of compositions by a guy named Michael Abels, and he had done this Swahili chorus that I fell in love with. And so I was doing a project with somebody, because I'm always doing too much stuff. I did a project with somebody, and I was mentioning wanting to reach out to Michael, and she was like, oh, I have his email. So I emailed him, and I was like, hey, you don't know me, but you want to write an opera? I swear to God. We had never met. I just knew I loved that soundtrack, and that my friend was like, oh, he's a super amazing guy. We met in California, and we agreed. I pulled him into the project. Wow. And we wrote it together. I mean, I provided, the lion's share of the melodic material, but he knew how to structure it, and he knew how to score it, because he scores movies, and he's an incredible composer himself, And so we made sure it's a co-write, and it got to the point where like he'd orchestrate something, and I'd be like, oh my God, if I could have done that, that's exactly how I would have. I mean, it was just like we were reading each other's minds. And I also wrote the libretto, because I have to make a story out of this, because the autobiography is very thin, And it was just this amazing collaborative project that happened completely remote. We never wrote together.
Wow.
It was always like I sent him stuff, and then he would send me back this, and I'd be like, oh, that's amazing. And I'd send him, or he'd be like, I need Act 2, Scene 1, like yesterday. Can you please send it to me right now? And he kind of pushed it. And, it got delayed 2 years because of COVID, which ended up being a blessing, because we could give it a little extra juice. And then it won the Pulitzer Prize.
So that's what I wrote that down. I said, she got a Pulitzer Prize.
Couldn't believe it.
Wow.
It was like the most amazing moment. And we're the only co-composers who won that, which I love. He was my first call. I found that out on Twitter. And I was like, what? And I called him up, and I was like, oh my God. And it was like so amazing to share that.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. How beautiful. You know what I mean? Because like what it did to, I think, for his career.
For his career too,
Because he's such a, because that's what he does. He's a composer. Like I'm a performer who also composes, but he's doing amazing stuff right now. Like,
but probably doesn't get the recognition as a performer gets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like they don't get the same, but
this was incredible.
So for both of y'all to be able to work together. But I think there's a common thread I'm seeing, that you, when presented with something that resonates with you, the story is very important.
Yes.
And your willingness to say yes.
Yeah.
Even though you might have the crisis after, which I want to talk to you more about that, but your willingness to say yes, I think is and not scared to reach out to other people, and because they're just people like us, right? Like sort of like you feel like, oh, you can't reach out to this person because they're this, but at the end of the day, they want to just connect with other creatives.
He was so excited to write an opera. He'd never written a full opera. He'd written kind of excerpts.
So you gave him that opportunity.
Yeah, and now we're like this, like it's like if he asked me to do anything, I'm there,
And you just knew of him because of the
movie,
and you heard his work.
And then I got a personal recommend. I got somebody who was like, yeah, he's awesome. I was like, okay. And then you meet him, literally the nicest man on the planet. You're like, are you really? He's really that nice. I'm like, I don't know how you survive in Hollywood, bro, because you are super nice. And he's doing it, like he's doing it his way. And he said yes too.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that for me is like some of the most beautiful collaborative, and all of my favorite projects are collaborations. The ballet was a collaboration. The opera was a collaboration. The albums I've made with Dirk are collaborations, songwriting is collaborations. And I feel most alive. And so I've just accepted that. I'm like, I'm at my best when I'm zinging off of somebody else. I'm not one of those people that's going to go into a garret and write on their own. It's not ever going to happen, and every once in a while I've written a song like that, and that's usually the ones that are given to me from the ancestors. And I put my name on them because somebody does, but I'm like, yeah, I guess I wrote that, but not really.
You said yes.
Yeah. I let it come through.
You said yes to their, whatever you're.
Yeah. And that's kind of, that's a me thing, and it doesn't happen all the time. And they're limited, but I'm okay with that. But the rest of it, I'm like, let's do this. Let's come on,
So I'm curious, you do so many projects and just the creative process, where to put your energy, but also do you ever have creative blocks? And if you do, it doesn't seem like you do, but if you do, how do you prevent that from happening?
I wouldn't say I have creative blocks so much as I have burnout.
Burnout is what you need to.
Yeah, because I have a lot going on. I tend to say yes to too many things. It's like I've said this before, I feel like I am telling the same story just in a lot of different ways. So it's not as crazy as you think because I just pull every project to what I want to do. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like I believe we each have a unique story to tell and to just double down on that. So I'm like, I don't need to do this because somebody else is doing that.
Right.
I don't need to do that because somebody else is doing that. I'm going to do the thing that I'm here to do. And I'm going to do it in as many different ways as possible. Whether it's a podcast or an opera or a ballet or an album or a book or whatever. But I don't always or mostly ever take care of myself like I need to. I've got 2 kids that I'm taking care of, with their dad and I are great friends, we've been divorced for a while, but we work together beautifully. So I'm very lucky, and they're amazing kids. And I feel like, juggling the work and the home life has been, it's been up, it's been down. I feel like we've found a good balance, these last couple of years, but I'm also I don't know how to stop, and I think as women, we're so used to just doing and doing and doing. And then as a Black woman, it's just that extra level of, we don't feel pain. We don't, we don't burn out. We don't get tired. We just expected to just be like the Energizer Bunny and just keep on going, and I know so many Black women in my life who are in different stages of burnout. Women in general in my life who are in different stages of burnout. So I'm really trying to think about, what does that mean for me, And I almost quit several times, I was almost like, I've had it. I can't, I lost my voice. I had to have surgery. I was like, this is not, at this point in my career, why am I so unhappy?
I'm
right?
So successful.
Right? Quote unquote successful.
Right.
Right.
But it's real stuff there that you
Yeah.
spoke about.
And I know, this extra thing, you have the music industry, you have the family, you have the being a woman in this world, which are all things that carry a lot of weight. And then you have the cultural thing, right? You have the tradition bearer. And that is an extra chunk that people who are not in that world don't understand. When there's a mission, right? When you have music that you are familially connected to or culturally connected to, that you are trying to present to the world, that you are trying to caretake, that you're trying to be responsible for, it's like a whole nother weight that almost equals all the other weights in a way. You know what I mean? Because you don't feel like you can say no.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you can take a break because you're like, if I don't do this, who's going to do it? Turns out other people will. When there's a vacuum, it will be filled.
Right.
Sometimes there's a thing that I've kind of been in the place where I'm like, if I don't take this, the opportunity disappears.
Right.
I will take it. Sometimes I'm like, if I don't take this, somebody else will take it. Pass it on, and learning which is which. hard.
Right, that's a tricky thing, right?
Comes with age, comes with, oh, I should have not said yes to this. Why did I say yes to this? Or, oh, I should have done that or whatever.
Right,
But it just takes doing that. But like when people don't have that extra thing, they don't understand. And a lot of times industry people don't understand that.
Right.
You have to find the people who like get that when you're up there on that stage representing ancestral work, it's not just a gig, you know, and it takes it out of you.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out how to
nurture yourself, because you don't want to not be doing that, right?
Of course.
I mean, that's
the
so
thing.
important. That's the whole thing that fuels most of what you're
so
doing.
if you don't take care of you, then all of it stops.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to realize. That's what I realized when
When
my
you lost
voice
your
cracked
voice
out.
and all that, that must have been like a wake-up call for you.
It
to
was.
say,
I had to cancel 2 shows. I've never canceled a show in my life. I will go on half dead. Like literally, I did like on this tour, I sang through the worst head cold. And I was just like on stage blowing my nose. Like, just do what you got to do. You know what I mean? I've literally like gone on in so many different, I've, brought my kids on the road. I was like nurse after every song. I mean, but that I was like, I either cancel these 2 shows or we have to cancel the tour. And I was like, okay, my body is telling me something and I need to listen, because it doesn't stop. It just gets bigger.
right.
The whacks get heavier. They get, the mallets get bigger.
And as you get older, it's even more like that, I think. It's like your body doesn't come back as quickly.
No, I'm discovering that, which is really fun.
We have so many things. I know I'm so grateful for our visit. I feel like I could visit for hours with you. There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but I know that you're probably exhausted too.
I tend to derail things too. I just like start talking about stuff.
No, it's awesome. It's awesome. I love it. I love it. You have so many awesome projects. Oh my gosh. I didn't know you had done all this. The American, I've been listening to it all afternoon, the American Railroad podcast.
Yeah.
So interesting. The last one I heard was the Native American woman who had brought this song to y'all and her experience of everybody in the ensemble doing her work, and that's just so fascinating to me and so beautiful, that work in that series.
Yeah, that's been really that was a really interesting turn for me, becoming an artistic director of an ensemble that I didn't put together. So Yo-Yo Ma started that 22 years ago.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and so like he was the AD for 20 years, and then he wanted to do other things, and they were like top of the pops. Like they were doing all these amazing things, because it's Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo is a huge artist. And then the current AD at the time brought me in as kind of a left field AD, artistic director. And I accepted because I had worked with him a little bit. I was on one of their records, and I was just like, oh, I need to expand beyond America. Like I need to know more about the world's music, and this is my opportunity. And so jumping into that was another one where I was like, yeah. Then I was like, ah. And it was a little bit of a longer scream than some of the other things.
So how do you get over those screams? Because it seems like that seems to be a common thread. You'll say yes, and then you'll, what have I done? So how do you bridge that gap of?
Well, in this instance, I just did a lot of listening and a lot of checking in and a lot of like learning about these artists that I suddenly was in at the head of. I was like, what is happening right now? And so my job became, there were some things that Silk Road was struggling with, as any organization that's been around for 20 years. It's like a marriage, right? Every single person in a marriage or a long-term relationship that I know of either broke up or had a hard time and figured out how to get past it. Nobody has smooth sailing after 7, 10, 15 years, right? And so that's the thing. You kind of go, is this a breakup, right? Is this organization done? Did it do what it was supposed to do? Or is it time to kind of reshift and to refocus? And, so having me come an American, who plays banjo, was an interesting choice. But I think, it's been 5 years. And the first really big project that I brought was the American Railroad Project, because I knew the history, and the history looks like Silk Road. You have Chinese workers, you have African-American workers, you have Irish workers, you have other immigrant groups, you have Native groups. It really is a microcosm of actually what America is all about, which is people coming from all over and then making this thing. Mm-hmm. So it became a really easy thing for people to kind of rally around my vision for Silk Road, which is basically like, I've been saying this forever, the world is in American music. That's why American music is so recognized around the world, because everybody sees a piece of themselves in it. Mm. So rather than separate ourselves from that, which is what we do, like, oh, we're America, it's like the Grammys is like 1 million categories and then one global music category, which is insane, right? Global, insane. What does that even mean? You know what I mean? So I was like, let's celebrate that in a way of bringing together these pillar groups, and then celebrating that. And then the podcast came because there's such a historical element. And we went to these places. We went to Standing Rock. We went to San Francisco. We were in New York. We went to North Carolina, which is my personal connection, with the Swananoa Tunnel story, which is, a song that, was famous in bluegrass circles, but actually started, from a cave-in that killed a lot of African-American convict laborers. And it started out as a song from the Black community first, but that had been erased. And so these two scholars found that out. And so that became my offering to the show, was to do Swananoa Tunnel. And also to not be afraid to say, this is our world music. This cultural music that we do, for me personally, string band music and all that, should be right next to, the Irish harp music, or, Chinese people or whatever. Like, this is our music. Right. So it gave an opportunity to really put everything on the same level in a way that was really beautiful.
So this season of the podcast that we're doing, it's the underlying theme is coming home. And I'll talk about Louisiana, where people were originally from here, move away and come back home, and why they come back home and what they do when they come back home. They bring a freshness and a new view of their home that they didn't see before.
Of course, you have to go away sometimes to see it.
So I was thinking, I was like, oh, I really want to interview Rhiannon, even though she's not from here, but because of your connection to North Carolina, it seems like you have such a strong connection to your home. And, but also I wanted to talk to you about what that means for you for coming home, because you're on the road. You live in North Carolina part-time.
I live in Ireland.
And you live in Ireland part-time.
Yeah, no, I live in Ireland.
Is that where you are full-time?
That's where the kids go to school.
So that's where home, right? So and you're on the road a lot.
Yeah, and I'm on the road a lot.
For you, what is a feeling of coming home for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something I've asked myself a lot. I thought about it a lot during the pandemic, because I was, it's one thing to be in Ireland and know I'm leaving in 3 weeks or 2 months or whatever. It's one thing to be in Ireland and to know I can't go anywhere. And I realized, that's when I started cooking. I started making biscuits. I started making the smells of home and the food of home and making them for the kids. And I was like, oh, this is, what's an expat? What's an immigrant? What is somebody who's seeking sanctuary, right? All three of them have left and have come to a new place, but they're very different vibes, and it really brought that home to me in a way that I hadn't really considered. And that's, that was the record that won the Grammy, was exploring all of what is home, and doing songs that made me feel like I was home, even though I was in Limerick, singing them to the kids, listening to them, thinking about these things. So for me, I carry home with me in a way, and I recreate it wherever I go. So it's sound, it's tastes, it's the sound of my kids' voices, and sometimes that's in Ireland. And sometimes it's in North Carolina. And I've had a few moments here in Louisiana since I've, been coming here for years and working with Dirk and just being in this space and also discovering the connections that, that we can have as rural Southern life has these connections, and also knowing that there was a train that went from was like either Greensboro or Mebane, like straight to Louisiana, like some years ago that people talk about. You know, it's just you find these little connections even between our places within Southern culture. You know, you find it musically. Like I listen to Creole music. I'm like, okay, that fiddling is like, I mean, you know, and I feel like there's a way in there. You know what I mean? Like,
Definitely,
so it's really interesting.
I've always felt like, I guess because I'd end up being with, you know, as a teenager, if we'd go to festivals, I went to festivals with my father, there were always folks that I always tended to hang around with that were from North Carolina.
Yeah.
I just felt like those were there was always, and still today, the friends that I've met over the years from North Carolina have, even if I don't see them, I saw a bunch of them out in the West recently, and I hadn't seen some of those guys for 20 years.
Wow.
But it was instant connection. And so I think Louisiana and North Carolina definitely has, we have a kinship of,
I think so.
Very strong,
Yeah.
I think.
I definitely feel it every time I come here. And, you know, now the show that we're doing now is basically, we talk to the audience and I'm always like, okay, we got to leave North Carolina, you know, but the only reason I'm happy to leave North Carolina is because we're going to Louisiana and then we'll do, you know, and then we'll go back to North Carolina. And it works like so easy. It's like, it makes so much sense. So interesting.
It is.
Music can lead us to things that after the fact makes sense. You know what I mean? If you know, if there was a drain or people, whatever,
Right.
But like the music and the food say it all.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, I do know that there's a chance you might be bringing that show to Louisiana. We're hoping, right, in the spring.
Yes.
Yeah.
It'll be some version of the show.
The show.
It might be not exactly what we're doing, but like it'll be, you know, a big part of it. Yeah.
So for folks that don't know, my Dirk, my former husband, and my oldest daughter, Amelia, is a part of Rhiannon's tour group now. So I know that I've been talking to Amelia quite a bit while she's on the road, and she's just enjoying it so much.
Yeah, she's killing it too. It's awesome. Yeah.
So I would love, and I haven't been able to see the show. I've been hearing people talk about it, but Shane and I are going to come we're going to get a weekend away and come see y'all on the road. But
I'll just say, because, you know, it's a 6-piece and it's intergenerational. So it's like, you know, Amelia's there, but also my nephew who grew up going to festivals and started playing bones when he was 5 years old at the Black Banjo Gathering. And so like one of the things that I love to see the most, you know, in that show, and former Chocolate Drop Justin Robinson and our longtime bass player Jason Cipher, one of the things I loved to see was Amelia teaching my nephew Justin, how to play triangle to back up when we were, you know, when she was leading and playing guitar on the Louisiana tunes. And then we would have Joe jams. So like where me and Justin Robinson would play Joe Thompson tunes, and then my nephew and Amelia would come with banjos and like play the tunes. And so then that moment in the show with Riro's House, which is a Joe Thompson tune, you know, and I was like, you guys sing it. And they were, you know, and then they started singing. It was just like, this is what it's about, right? This is what it's about. And of course, you got to make money. You got to, you know, keep the roof, you know, from leaking and all that stuff. But like to have a show where it's like I'm watching it in real time, you know, and then I'm also learning. We're also always learning. I was like, this is success to me, is to be able to say, this is the show I'm going to do, and put it on. People come and we get to do the thing, you know.
You have to do your thing.
We get to do the thing. We took that to the Hollywood Bowl.
I know.
It's
Tell us about that. The tour at the Hollywood Bowl.
We had so many banjos on that stage. I was like, are we really doing this? Are we really doing Old Corn Liquor at the Hollywood Bowl right now? Oh my God. And people were like going nuts. Because, like, of course, this music is so powerful. That's why it's still around. It just needs to get to people without the crap in the middle, you know? It's just like, we're just up there playing the music, and people are feeling it. They're into it, you know?
What do you think it is about that music that you're so passionate about, that you're playing on this group? What do you think why do you think people are resonating so much to that?
Well,
that maybe don't follow it. Like you were in our world, yes, they all know about it, but people that are not familiar with this type of music.
Well, it's what all modern American music is built on. The music of the working class from the 1900s. Like, That is at the basis of everything. So when we get up there, I always say this is welcome to our porch. It's a magical traveling porch. We take it wherever we go because people need to understand this is music of people who had nothing else, right? All my ancestors were poor as bejesus, right? And it's like what they had were their voices, and if they're lucky, instruments, and this cultural idea of how to be together in music and dance, right? This is how we celebrated because we had nothing, but we had a lot. We had nothing and a lot at the same time. And so we've become so materialistic, and so much of the American psyche is based on financial gain. Like Virginia was started by a corporation. You know what I mean? It's been there since the beginning. And then, of course, there's slavery and all this. They're all financial. Racism is just a tool to ensure, class, right? So like all of this stuff disappears when you think about the music. It's like this is how people who are from all these different places, could communicate through music and through food. And people feel the realness of it, I think. And we're all up there, steeped in it in different ways, bringing all this tradition, all of this cultural connection, and then this genuine love of what we're doing. And I just go, what's really interesting, I know we're probably at the time, but what's really interesting to me is, I've been talking about slavery for a long time. I'll talk about race. I kind of pick my moments. People kind of know when to gasp and to go, I'll say minstrelsy and there's, oh. But what's really interesting is that when you start talking about class and poverty, people don't know what to do.
They're uncomfortable because they're not.
Very.
Because nobody talks about that.
Because everybody in America is a temporarily embarrassed millionaire. That's the difference between like America and like a lot of other places in the world. Everybody thinks they can be rich here when it's not true. It's just not true. If you're lucky, maybe you hit it, whatever. But if the system is not made for people. And like, what is rich anyway? What does it mean to have a lot of money? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of unhappy rich people out there.
That's for sure.
But just to say, there's a lot of people who don't have the basic things that they need to survive, and nobody wants to admit that there's still loads of people who are extremely poor, and that most of people in America for the history of America were extremely poor. The majority. That's just facts. Mm-hmm. People were coming over because they were being run out of their own places because of colonialism, because of violence, because of whatever, religious intoleration. And what are they bringing? Music, foodways, cultural things, dance. So that's how you talk to somebody else who has you know what I mean?
Sure.
And I just think that is a spiritual center, like in the midst of a very violent life. You think about early American life was very violent, but there was this idea of community, and we are missing that. So there's a lot of mental health problems, and I really do believe that a lot of that is coming from the fact that we don't have that cultural center so much anymore, and that our music has been commodified and removed from our everyday life. And I just mean, I'm saying in general, like obviously you and I like are in a different position, but for the average person, when you want music, you buy it, you don't make it. Or you don't go to next door and say, hey, Joe, can you play that tune? I want to hear that tune. For the majority of human existence, music was tied to a living person until the recording industry. Even sheet music, you got to have somebody play it.
Right.
Right? But when you have records, all of a sudden it becomes an object, and whoever controls the technology controls the music. And it's been that way since records, since cylinders. So it's like we're in this position now where the majority of music that people hear is disembodied and is background. And that's terrible because music is central to our well-being. So I'm just trying in my own little way to go back to your original question about 40 years later. I'm trying my own little way to remind people of that, because I am at a position where I can put out a record on a major label that's just fiddle and banjo and hardly any vocals. That was recorded outside while the locusts were going, Right. I'm in a position to do that. So I'm going to do it for the people who aren't in the position to do that, who could probably make a way better record than that I can make. but I'm in the position to do it and
What
to
a
remind
beautiful
people.
thing that you did at the height of what you could have. You could have. You were. Yeah, I mean, you could have done anything, but you did that
Well,
because it's so important to you.
it's so, yeah. And I'm just like, people were, it's amazing. People were just like thinking like I'd done something genius. I was like, it's literally a field recording. You know what I mean? We made it in 3 days. People were like, did you put on the locusts afterwards? I was like, oh my God. We literally went outside and put up microphones and played the music. But it was so crazy to folks, And like, look, it's going to sell 1 million records, what is. But it really kind of like, people were like, oh, this, you could just see. And then that's all you can do is you can just hope that maybe somebody else hears that and hadn't heard some of the recordings we heard, and maybe they'll go back and listen, whatever.
Right.
We made videos of all,
where this comes from.
We made videos of all the songs so people could look at it and they could learn. It's also,
Wow.
It's actually a record of these tunes as we play them, without any other extraneous instruments, so just the fiddle and banjo tradition of North Carolina. So it's, there's always a mission. It's just like, it never stops. I have like 5, 6, 8 other projects that I'm like, I'm writing a book.
You have 2 children's books too.
I have 2 children's books. There's another one in the works. And yeah, I'm writing my first, I'm writing a book about working class American music.
Wow.
Trying to all these things I've been talking about, putting them all into one place. And it's exciting and scary, but again, I found my collaborator now who's going to help me organize it and stuff. So it's fun.
Gosh, so interesting and fascinating. And I'm so glad I got a chance to visit with you finally, to put up a couple of mics instead of just waving in the driveway.
I know.
Is there anything that you'd want to talk about that you have so many things that you've done. Oh, I do want to talk about your new festival.
Oh yeah, that was something
I think
else.
tell folks about that and the history, like why you wanted to create another festival. Why do you think there was?
Well, it had been 20 years since something called the Black Banjo Gathering, which was, it was kind of this, it's a long story, but it ended up being the celebration of the African roots of the banjo and people who wanted to put that out there more because it's still not very known. And I was a part of that. And that's where I met Justin Robinson, and that's where I met Dom. And shortly thereafter, and Joe was also there. We started playing with Joe and becoming the Carolina Chocolate Drops. And it was a kind of a watershed moment for a lot of folks. And so I was like, oh, it's 20-year anniversary. We should mark it somehow. Oh. And I had already been thinking about this idea that people are doing in food ways, what I'm doing with music, like cultural excavation, And I was like, we should do it. I want a community cultural festival. I don't want just the music festival. So the idea of biscuits and banjos came about because I had learned how to make biscuits and got really into the history of biscuits and what it all means and, Southern food and blah, 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 blah. And so, it was the most amazing 3-day festival in Durham, North Carolina. It was a historically Black city, and where the Chocolate Drops got started, and it was the Chocolate Drop reunion and the beginning of, the Old Time Review, which is the band that we've been talking about. And there were so many amazing, Taj Mahal was there. And it was just it was one of those things that I know people are going to talk about for a long time. I felt so blessed, had an amazing crew of people, a lot of hard work, and a beautiful weekend of food and music and culture. And will it happen again? It's hard. It's hard to say. Yeah. It's a very hard funding climate right now. True. Because it's a nonprofit. I don't want it to be a commercial music festival. I wanted it to be something that, really collaborated with Durham. That was something that felt good to everybody, that didn't feel like we were selling out, that, we weren't beholden to anybody. But that also means that it was a lot of fundraising. And we already kind of knew we weren't going to do it next year. We were going to try to do every 2 years. But the realities of the Trump administration are pretty, we're getting, Silk Road's getting turned down for NEA grants that we've always got, the reality's coming home, and what I don't want to do is to do something that makes the sours the taste of the first one, because the first one was so special. So it's like we either expand it and go to the next place, which takes about twice as much budget,
Right.
or we figure out what else we're going to do with that energy and with that, and yeah. So Biscuits and Banjos is a thing that's going to be around forever. How and when and what we do with it, that's, we will honor it in the way that it makes sense. I don't want to set people up for failure. That I don't want to do.
Well, so is there anything else you want to talk about that we haven't talked about? Rhiannon has an amazing website, and I highly recommend going. Went there to do more research. I've been keeping up with you because I wanted to see where my girl was on the road. But go look. She has so many things with PBS, My Music. I mean, I want to go watch that. The PBS My Music with Rhiannon Giddens.
Yeah, there's 3 seasons of that.
3 seasons of that.
Yeah. The first one was North Carolina. The second one was Silk Road. We did railroad stuff. And the third one was in Ireland. And that one, it's so beautiful. And obviously there'll be no more. So 'cause PBS is being dismantled as well. So I'm so grateful and blessed for what I've been able to do, but I'm also just, it's hard to know how to contain the rage, but it's still out. It's, that collaboration with PBS is out there, and I'm very blessed to have it.
Y'all go check it out, and go to her website, Rhiannon Giddens, and be on the lookout. She might be in Louisiana in the spring. We'll hope.
Yes, yes.
Thanks so much, Rhiannon.
Thanks for having me.
I know you're tired. You've been on the road, and you took the time to come, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.